The International Women's Day is celebrated the world over on the 8th of March. The day aims to help nations worldwide eliminate discrimination against women. It also focuses on helping women gain full and equal participation in global development. Several resolutions to protect women's rights have also been passed globally, which has opened up broader avenues for the growth and development of women in our society. But despite these, and especially in developing countries, discrimination and inequality is still a major issue. Nigeria still has a lot of laws in place which discriminates against women. But how did the British solve these gender-based issues, given that many of the Nigerian laws were based on the model they left behind? These and more were the questions I put to my guest, the British High Commissioner to Nigeria. She was appointed to the position in November 2018. Prior to this, she was the British ambassador to Zimbabwe from 2014. She has extensive experience representing the UK in many capacities, and at one time she was the Director of Human Rights and International at the Ministry of Justice. A passionate advocate of women's rights, I began the interview by asking what the theme "Choose to Challenge" really means to her.
Choosing to challenge means standing up and challenging gender discrimination wherever we see it. A challenged world is an alert world, and from challenge comes change. So let's choose to challenge and adopt the choose to challenge pose. So the sub-theme of this year is also women in leadership, and that's particularly what the UK government will be focusing on, overcoming barriers to women reaching leadership positions, whether in politics, in the arts, in medicine, in the armed forces, in diplomacy, and standing up for those, to remove those barriers and to act as role models for those of us who have managed to achieve and overcome those barriers ourselves.
Nigeria still has a lot of laws in place which discriminate against women. Section 26 of the Nigerian Constitution, for example, discriminates against women in the area of citizenship rights. At most workplaces also, motherhood is still not recognized as a social function that deserves compensation. So can you please share with us how Britain has resolved these issues, given that many of the Nigerian laws we borrowed from the British?
Yes, indeed. Well, the landmark for us was in 2010 when we introduced the Gender Equality Act, which essentially discriminated any form of prejudice and bias against women, this sexual orientation, for example. So we have something called the Public Sector Equality Duty, which makes it a responsibility of employers, wherever they are, for example, to not discriminate against anyone under account of any of those characteristics, including gender. So it started with gender, but it's now much more mainstreamed into our legal frameworks and into our best practices. So I think we've come a long way, but it has been a journey. And so bringing it back to Nigeria, what we're going to be particularly focusing on for this set of issues around International Women's Day is your equivalent of our act, which is the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill. And that has three components. There's a set of institutional frameworks to facilitate people trying to work against discrimination. Secondly, and perhaps most importantly, criminalising discrimination. And thirdly, working with your Gender Commission to make sure that people are aware of their responsibilities and helping put in place these institutional frameworks and to assure they act in accordance with the law. So that's a big focus for us through the activities around International Women's Day.
I hear you talk about the bill, but let's talk specifically about gender equality in the police. How have you progressed with that? Because we still have laws discriminating against women in our police force.
No, it's been a really big focus for us because we've been working with the Nigerian police over many years and actually have been instrumental in helping get the new Police Act passed. But as you say, that won't be helpful until we have a time where women as part of the police force themselves are not discriminated against. That's an absolute foundation in order for the Nigerian police to act responsibly and without discrimination against women in wider society. If they haven't got their own act together, they absolutely can't be out there policing on behalf of the public. So it is frankly disgraceful that it is still legal for a woman who has to lose her job as a police officer once she And I also understand that it's not possible for a woman police officer to stay at the local barracks with her husband. But of course, for a man, it's possible to do that. So it just means that it's very hard for women to enter the police force and to rise up the ranks. So you're losing out, therefore, on 50% of the very capable potential that you could have. And it's very important that the armed forces and the police forces more generally are representative of the people that they are policing. So we absolutely have to remove these ridiculous barriers, which are a sort of a mark of traditional hierarchical, patriarchal society. And we'll be working very closely with the police to try and help them remove these barriers to women's advancement.
Okay, I hear you say you'll be working closely with the police force, but what about the Nigerian government? What role do you think that the government should be playing, and even the citizenship, in achieving gender equality in Nigeria?
Well, there's a number of dimensions to it, but starting with the law itself. So, as I say, it is absolutely critical that your National Assembly and the Senate passes the Gender and Equal Opportunities Act. And why is it being held up? Well, because there's a lot of vested interest amongst men who do not want to see, for example, 35% of women represented in politics. And that's just simply not acceptable. You know, we have to the male legislators, that it's absolutely in their interest, as much as the interests of Nigerian society, to have a fair representation of women in ranks. They will be helpful in helping them understand what women need from their parliamentarians. So I think at the moment there's a lot of resistance from men, but every time I meet the Speaker, and in fact I'm having dinner with the Speaker this evening, I will be raising this issue and repeatedly, as well my fellow diplomats, particularly the female heads of mission amongst us, to try and help people understand why it is in their interest, why it's in the interest of parliamentarians to be willing and open to have a fairer representation of women at senior levels in society. So passing the Act is step one. Perhaps even harder, though, is challenging these social norms that enable these cultural practices to continue. Child marriage, the way women are discriminated against in divorce and so on, land rights for women. These are all things that are accepted as part of Nigerian culture. But I say that there is no excuse for this. Women are entitled to be treated equally throughout all aspects of the law, for the benefit of society, and also simply because it's absolutely the right thing to do, to treat women with respect and to give them equal rights. So challenging those cultural practices is also going to be very important. And for that, we need to work with all aspects of society, including traditional rulers who are very influential on this. So challenging the law itself and then also the cultural practices. And if we can get both of those right, then I think we have a chance of moving this forward. And Nigeria must move forward. I mean, Nigeria is very low, is ranked at 133 out of 149 on the global gender gap index, and it's going down, not up. And frankly, that's disgraceful for a country of Nigeria's stature in Africa. It's really important that Nigeria starts to make progress on the Global Gender Equality Act as a country that should rightfully be taking its place as a leader in Africa and globally.
Now, away from that interview, some senior female lawyers have also spoken to Law Weekly about some of the discrimination that women face. They've also proffered some suggestions for dealing with it. We have the views of two of them up next.
It's discriminatory that if my friend, my sibling, my neighbor is locked up in a police station, I, as a woman, cannot go and effect their bail. You get to the police station and they tell you, woman, no, they do bail. In the 21st century? No, it continues, but you choose your battles. That's a battle worth fighting. But you see, you're dealing with well, I don't want to go into that argument right now, but I mean, there's a lot of discrimination and we faced it. And the kind of discrimination we face as female, I speak for myself, it's very subtle. You're arguing a case in court, maybe a man on the other side, and a male judge is sitting there looking at, even a female judge, but you don't you're a lady. Hello. There are no ladies at the bar. I'm doing my job. And then even if they don't say it out so overtly, it plays out when they're writing the ruling. What they would gladly give a man, they probably won't give to you that, oh, you're too cantankerous. You become too cantankerous when you're arguing your case. But if a man argues the same thing, he's not cantankerous, it's allowed. But you know, you just suck it up and move on. How many female warriors are you aware of in history? We say Queen Amina, we say Moremi. 2, if you could really engage in deep thinking and research, you'll probably find 5. If you find at all, you'll find 10.
Not much.
Men, if I ask you for how many male warriors there are, and I've said this before, that nature in the prehistoric time, or from the beginning of mankind, nature has given woman the homemaker role. By virtue of her nature, she's the childbearer. So nature naturally gave her that role. But over time, she came out of the house. While she was in the house, the male was on the field. He went hunting, he went on war expeditions. The woman stayed at home. So those traditional roles, you need to break out of them. So I come back to the issue of women being senior advocates. Like, you cannot count many female warriors. That is the same kind of thing. And because litigation, which is what you need to do to become a senior advocate, litigation is war. It's a legal war. It's warfare. If you are going to exceed, you have to excel in litigation to become a senior advocate. You have engaged in many wars, many legal battles. So, and a lot of women are not disposed to battling, fighting. So that explains, I mean, so apart from the historic rule, there's also the women are generally peaceful.
I grew up in a family where gender wasn't an issue. So it took me a while to recognize these gender issues because that wasn't my background. My father didn't treat people any differently, so I didn't know there was an expectation of me as being female and not doing this and not doing that. So I did not personally recognize them, and so that's what I explain to people. They may have been there, but because I didn't know that was what it is, I would probably just put it down to you didn't like me or something, but not because of my gender, because I never for once felt I was different or inferior because I was female. So if it came to attaining certain things, my default mechanism would be to say the other person was better, not because I didn't get it because I was female. And while I do recognize that there are gender equality issues, and they're very serious, I find that sometimes it may just be that the other person is better. And I think it's part of telling ourselves the truth that while gender is an issue, we need to also recognize that at times the other candidate is just better. So that's my perspective. Now, having said that, on occasions where I did encounter it, I would try to set the record straight as best as I could, and more often than not, that worked for me. And I'm not quite a pushover. There are no obstacles. There are no barriers. You know, the world is yours. It's up to you to do and be whatever you want to do. Beg your pardon, and achieve whatever you want to achieve. There's nobody stopping you. There are no limitations. It's only you that can limit yourself. And so I would say to my younger self, you know, go for it. That's all I'd say.
Welcome back. Let's now bring you a recap of some of the activities from the courtrooms.
We begin with the report that the Federal High Court sitting in Lagos has set aside its order of interim forfeiture made against 2 properties of the former Senate President, Senator Bukola Saraki. Justice Mohammed Liman also dismissed an application by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the EFCC, seeking a final forfeiture of the properties to the federal government. The properties are located at 17A McDonald Road, Ikoyi, Lagos State. In his judgment, Justice Liman held that the EFCC had failed to show that the monies used to purchase the property belonged to the Kwara State government. Before the same Justice Lehman, the EFCC rearranged a judge of the Federal High Court, Justice Rita Ofili Ajumogobia, on allegations of unlawful enrichment, breach of trust, and money laundering. She was arraigned on an amended 15-count charge dated March 2nd. Before her arraignment, Ajumogobia was docked alongside a senior advocate of Nigeria, Godwin Obla, who had initially been charged with her. The EFCC then applied to the court to withdraw the name of Obla from the charge. The court granted the request, and Obla was accordingly acquitted and discharged. This paved the way for the rearrangement of Justice Ajumogobia as the sole defendant in the amended charge. She pleaded not guilty to all 15 counts, was allowed to continue on her existing bail conditions before the court adjourned to 21st and 28th of April for trial. Meanwhile, Senior Advocate of Nigeria Godwin Obla, in a personal statement reacting to his acquittal, said his history of service to the country as an anti-corruption practitioner is public knowledge and no temporary setback is enough to obviate it. Still, at the same Federal High Court, another judge, Justice Chukwujeku Anekwe, has struck out the charge against a former minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Jumoke Akinjide, and two others on allegations of fraud and money laundering to the tune of 650 million naira. Justice Anekwe struck out the charge for being incompetent. Ms. Akinjide was standing trial alongside a former senator who represented Oyo Central Senatorial District between 2011 and 2015, Senator Ayo Adeseun, and the PDP chieftain, Mrs. Olanrewaju Otiti. They were all alleged to have received monies from a former Minister of Petroleum Resources, Mrs. Diezani Alison Madueke, in the build-up to the 2015 general elections. In Abuja, a federal high court has ordered substitutor service on a former governor of Imo State, Mr. Ikedio Hakim, for failing to appear in court to answer to charges of harassment and cyber stalking of Chinyere Amuchinwa preferred against him by the Office of the Inspector General of Police. At the resumed sitting of the court, the prosecutor, who claimed that Mr. Hakim has been evasive, applied for an order of substitutor service to enable him pace the processes on his last known address at Asokoro, Abuja. According to the charge, Hakim and Chinedu Okpareke was said to have threatened to release a nude photograph of Amuchinwa if she fails to drop the charge of attempted kidnap she made against them. Justice Taiwo has fixed the 18th of March for the arraignment of the two defendants. The same Justice Taiwo has ordered a stay of proceedings in the trial of a former head of service of the Federation, Winifred Oyoita, and others. The judge, in a ruling, held that the EFCC abused court processes by obtaining from another court an ex parte order for the freezing of the bank accounts of the defendants in the matter. Justice Taiwo, who described the EFCC's conduct as forum shopping aimed at getting a favorable court judgment, said the move was reprehensible and condemnable. In the interest of justice, the judge ordered a stay of proceedings in the trial until the EFCC and its lawyers do the needful by withdrawing the application before the other court. The trial of the chairman of the defunct Pension Reform Task Team, Abdulrashid Maina, has continued with the testimony of a defense witness, Ngozika Ihoma. She told the court that the suspended chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Mr. Ibrahim Magu, mismanaged 222 properties recovered by the Pension Reform Task Team. Mr. Ihoma, who was a consultant to the Pension Reform Task Team, also claims that one of the properties was bought by Mr. Femi Falana, a claim the senior lawyer has consistently denied. And we round off with the report that the trial of Mr. Omoyele Sowore has continued at the Chief Magistrate Court in Abuja. Mr. Sowore, who was accompanied to the court by his spiritual advisor, is standing trial alongside 4 others for conspiracy, unlawful assembly, and inciting public disturbance. The first prosecution witness, a police officer, says the defendants were arrested by a team of policemen at the Lokogoma Junction area of Abuja. Under cross-examination by the counsel to the defendants, Mr. Marshall Abubakar, the witness admits that he did not personally arrest Mr. Shore, but insists that he was the member of the team that effected the arrest of all the defendants. Chief Magistrate Mabel Shegun Bello has varied the bail conditions of some of the defendants by allowing them to travel outside Abuja. She is adjourned to the 17th of May for the continuation of trial.
We're not done talking about issues affecting women. The vice chairman of the NBA Ikorodu branch is at the forefront of getting the senior female lawyers to mentor the younger ones. She believes that the NBA also has a role to play in eliminating discrimination against women, not only in the legal profession, but also in their host communities.
The date 8th of March is well themed because looking at the majority of particularly young female lawyers, the fact that they started their practice early enough, maybe as soon as they are out of the law school, then going into practice vis-a-vis their home fronts, rearing of their children, their gender issue, all these things always come as a challenge to them. They always find it very difficult to maintain a balance.
Talk to us about your experience, because I know that as vice chairman of the branch, you've had to deal with a lot of issues, even in this community, in the legal profession, providing leadership to the women who work with you. Share with us, the experiences.
Thank you very much. I have been in private legal practice for a very long time. Know each and every one for whom they are and know how to dance along with them in order to bring out the best in them. That's the secret. Don't see yourself as master of all, or you know everything. They want, in an ordinary setting, an average woman will want to see how our fellow women will be brought down. But don't do as if you're a boss. Just play along with them as if you're on the same level. You get the best out of these women.
I wanted you to also talk to us about, because you've already said don't act like a boss. I hear some of the challenges you're preferring, but I want us to talk more about solutions. You are 30 years plus at the bar. This is an issue that you've had to deal with at some point. But what would you be telling women out there? And as vice chair of a branch, how do you deal with, what do you tell the women that work with you, that look up to you as a mentor, for those who are coming behind? What would you be telling them on how to deal with issues like this?
In most cases, I make myself available. I do make myself accommodative. Then you respect yourself as an elder. Then don't try to do as if you know everything. There are a lot of things you can learn from all this your upcoming one. But as a leader in the branch, particularly in this terrain Ikorodu branch, you just have to calm down. Take things easy. Bring down yourself. Then from there, allow God to lift you up. Do you see the best? By the time you bring yourself to the lowest of the low, people will want to associate themselves with you. Then there and then you will learn more from them and be able to grow up together and bring out the best in those women.
What do you think that the NBA can do to help women choose to challenge and break all these barriers that you've talked about?
NBA as a body can organize workshops and the seminars to gather these women together. Professor Mrs. Ayo Atsenua, she's coming as well to talk to these women. How she was able to weather the storm from being a lecturer to a doctorate degree to becoming a professor, and at the same time she's the dean of faculty of law, University of Lagos. How did she get there? And she has all these challenges that she has gone through at the same time. So let them come and tell us how they were able to get there and weather the storm, as they still maintain the top. Then it will maybe enlighten them, expand their coast, and they will be able to, they will be able to learn one or two things from whatever they will be able to gather from these resource persons. That will be my major happiness, because they will learn one or two things from them.
And that's our program this week. Don't forget that you can find these and past episodes of the program on our YouTube page. I'm Shola Shayeli. Thank you for watching, and see you next week.